Recorded live from the mats of Radical MMA in New York City. The Martial Culture Podcast. Your source for in-depth combat sports and martial arts insights with Coach Rene and Matt Peters. Ring the bell and let's get it on.
Good morning, Philippines. Did you see? Did you hear the news?
What news?
We're number 5 on the Apple Podcast Top 200 list in the Philippines.
Wow.
Number 5.
Number 5. That's fantastic. Well, hello to all our Filipino listeners.
We appreciate you.
And my friend John Balin, amazing judo practitioner who also works with some of the guys fighting in OneFC, Team Lakai. He's amazing. And shout out to all the students of John Balin, my good friend who used to beat the crap out of me when I was a white belt.
How do we say thank you in Filipino?
In Tagalog. Well, one of the languages. I don't actually know. I just know
Siri.
Salamat. Is that right?
How do I say thank you? All right,
I think it's salamat.
She's on
right?
She's on
right.
Crazy. It doesn't matter. Thank you in Filipinese.
Tagalog. Please.
I apologize.
But that's not the
We're going to lose all of our
That's
listeners.
not the only dialect. The dialect they have there. Their language they have there.
Why isn't it called Filipinese? That sounds like a weird word. Filipinese. It sounds like a flower mixed with like
it's also like in when Germans don't refer them to themselves as Germans, they refer them to themselves as, Deutsch, like, so they don't call German, like when you refer to someone as their language, it's in your language, which has a lot of cultural baggage. Like the reason why China is called China is it has to do with with the first time we anglified Chinese words, or Japan, anglified Japanese words and then turned them into our language. Like Japan was actually the Portuguese version of the Chinese word for Japan. So it became Chapango. And then it became Japan, which is nothing like Nihon.
So China is not China.
Yeah, no, China's.
What do they call it?
I don't know. I can say it in Chinese. It's like Middle Kingdom, but I don't know how to read it in Chinese. But
it's like when people call Puerto Rico. It's not Puerto Rico. It's Puerto Rico.
Yeah, well, that's just just being able to.
Being extra.
But also, like the Philippines has multiple languages, as I understand. The majority one is Tagalog.
Isn't it a very small group of islands?
It's quite populous, and also the thing is, look at England, which is also compared to the rest of Europe, is not. But there's a tremendous amount of dialects. There used to be a lot of different languages in different parts. Like there's Welsh and things like that. So if you go back before modern times, if you were one hill over, you would find a very different linguistic and cultural community, and that goes for every place around the world, including Africa. We have one student, and I ask him, how many languages do you speak? He's like, well, actually, I speak 9 languages. I'm like, holy crap. I speak this one, I speak this one, I speak this one. If you go over here, you got to speak this one. And they're very different, supposedly. Anyway, but the same thing is true with martial arts. If you're from one part of Japan, a lot of times your techniques looked a certain way. And if you're another part of Japan, they looked another way because there was no cross-pollination. And, distance back then was tremendous. This is why I always say that, the modern element of martial arts, one of the reasons why modern martial arts gets so good is because we have the internet and YouTube and all these things to break across these geographic barriers. You teach technique, and then 5 minutes later, a guy in Sweden knows it. You listen to the podcast, someone in the Philippines is listening. They makes them think about something. There's this
Small
massive,
world.
in this internationalization, and cliche, the world is becoming more flat, and we're interacting much, much more for better or for worse. But it definitely, in terms of martial arts, we are cross-pollinating so much that it's fantastic and fascinating to see the guy starts out with this move and moves on to this move, this style, this and this. And you can see that in OneFC this weekend or the UFC. There's a tremendous variety of techniques,
Yeah.
Did you see some of the big fights?
Yeah. Boy, Watterson.
Yeah.
She got beat up.
Yeah, but that was nothing compared to Crone.
Oh
boy. But yeah, and Watterson, and let's talk about let's go through the list first. Let's talk about the Mackenzie Dern. Did you see the Mackenzie Dern fight?
I saw highlights of that. I didn't watch the whole thing.
She got beat up too.
Yeah.
And again, she's trying to clinch, not a lot of striking, and just getting picked off by a better striker. It's very simple, And then Crone comes and he fights Cub Swanson. And I was watching it with some people, and they're like, one of them was a little more, oriented to rooting for the jiu-jitsu guy. And another one was a little more oriented for rooting against the jiu-jitsu guy. And we saw the fight different ways, but I think everybody can understand that Crone was completely outclassed in striking. And, I said it on the podcast when he was fighting in Pride. I'm not Pride, in Japan, in Ryzen. I think it was Ryzen, right? It was Ryzen, one of the other promotions that there was on there. And he said if he doesn't, improve his skills and learn how to clinch better, he's going to have a real problem. And in his last fight against Caceres, he did clinch better. But there was no really fundamental polishing of strikes that saw it. And he was really put to the test. It was a test. And it showed that he is more of a one-dimensional athlete. One, his jiu-jitsu is amazing. You can't take that away from him. But obviously he couldn't get to where he needed to get to. And his wrestling needs work, and his striking to set up his wrestling is not good. And he was really winging punches, which is one of the worst things, and he got a lot of damage. The funny thing is, he said after that fight that he felt he won. Because he kept connecting with some crappy overhands that Cub Swanson was allowing to happen so he could counter. But Cub was defending most of them. It just shows that he really doesn't understand the striking game or what happened in that fight if he felt that he won it all. And that's a problem. If you really went out of that fight and you felt you won, that is a problem. That is a problem because you did not win.
Yeah, look at that again.
Yeah, exactly. You need to stop thinking the world is flat too. He thinks the world is flat. But anyway, yes, he thinks the world is flat. And I feel bad for him because, it's the son of Hickson. There's a lot of probably pressure on him. And I know the entire jiu-jitsu world was like, go Crone, but the thing is, MMA is MMA. Now, absolutely, ground fighting or submission fighting is an integral part of MMA, but it's not the only part. It's not the only part. And it has to be put together. It's not like UFC 1 where they could just walk through these guys, and you're not fighting people one-dimensional. So if you're one-dimensional and they are not, or even if you're kind of two-dimensional, but you don't have that wrestling base, you're going to have a tough day. And Crone's wrestling, his no-gi wrestling was not really where it should be. He was shooting from way far out, and he wasn't setting them up with strikes. And the striking was poor, and he was too high up. He wasn't moving on. He was kind of moving. And I think Cub Swanson, though, he really needed to win. He really needed to win. And I think he was thinking way back, he was having flashbacks to his fight with Brian Ortega, where he was kind of winning, and they got tapped out. So he was really being conservative. And one of the persons I was watching was why isn't he putting the shebang, bomb on? But I'm well, if he overcommits, he's afraid that he's going to get caught with something. Brian Ortega just jumped that guillotine and tapped him out, right? And so, he was holding back, but he definitely won. But he was doing what he needed. But I still think if he just laid out he was boom, that some of the other people are going to do, Crone would have had an even worse day. It was bad. He's just not prepared. It was sad to see too because actually I like the kid. He's not a kid anymore in his 30s. But if he does not improve, he will wash out of the UFC. And it is a fact that the UFC is the highest level of MMA, generally speaking, all things being equal. I mean, obviously there's some great fights, and OneFC had some really nice fights this weekend. But, overall, you have the highest concentration of skilled fighters. And you have some not so skilled fighters too, but you have the highest concentration of skilled fighters. And if he breaks into that top 10 echelon and he's not prepared, he's going to get really hurt. And this was just not – it was not a good time. You have to get out. I tell people on the podcast all the time, if you're a Taekwondo guy, you should investigate wrestling and jiu-jitsu, or you're a karate guy, you should do the same thing. If you're a Muay Thai guy, if you're a jiu-jitsu guy, you have to investigate the striking arts, you really – and the wrestling arts. And the key that puts them all together is upper body grappling, and that has always been shooting in and taking guys down. And that brings us to Michelle Waterston fight, which was a great fight. I thought it was a great fight, and she got beaten up. And she was shooting in kind of, somewhat nicely. She was really trying to out-grapple Joanna. And I kind of thought that's what she did because she didn't have the reach advantage. Joanna's a great striker. She kept hitting her, and really great. And let's be honest here, Joanna's a little bit better of a striker. So she's picking her apart, so she's trying to grapple in. And some of the stuff Michelle did was really good. But Michelle, I don't know if you know, but she likes that over-the-head judo throw. And that was just not working mostly for her. You know, it was just not. I mean, it worked a little bit for a second. You know, for a second it did.
Looks like she was trying to get a choke.
Yeah.
Her back a lot.
Yeah. And but she didn't have combinations in her. So she started out good. But she's like, oh, I do my throw and it fails. Now, shoot, what do I do? No, like any martial art, it's like 1 doesn't work, go to 2. 2 doesn't work, go to 3. Really, you should be fighting for this. Jab, cross, hook in striking, obvious. You know, right hook, left low kick, you know, in Muay Thai. You know, like boom. It's just simple combinations, but you have the same in wrestling. You go to the double, you go to the single, you go back to the double, you ride out. Like this is what makes Khabib freaking amazing. It's just like you try one, he's on the other. And she didn't quite put the combinations together. And frankly, she's just outpowered. Joanna's just a lot stronger and technically good. So you're dealing with someone who has technique, very good defensive wrestling, very good, and knows what's up. And, you know, Joanna almost tapped her out with a necktie. Also, Michelle did get the back and almost finish it, but she didn't quite finish. So she has to work. Like when you get those opportunities, and this is true for anyone. So she did. She got it to the back. She did, but she got to the back a couple times. And this was really not that Michelle was so great. It's Joanna's way of getting up. So Michelle would hit a takedown. Then Joanna would go to her knees, like kind of like the turtle position, and try to scramble up. Which, if you're fast, works. But in this case, it gave up her back. And maybe the Michelle Waterson camp was prepared for this, because it looked like they really did it. She took her back like 3 times, I think, and had the choke 3 times and didn't finish any time. That being said, Joanna's defense was good. But you have to have more combinations than that finish. When that chance comes, it's not going to come forever. It may even come once. You have to finish. You have to refine that thing. And she was really looking for that choke. I would like to have done a Khabib, look for a neck crank. And she was not doing that. She was like really staying on the choke and trying to finish that choke. And then her arms got a little tired. And then what I would say is if you're losing the position, don't get thrown off. You have to maintain top position. But she did great. You know, I don't want to talk down to Michelle Waterson. She did really great. It was just a very prepared, mostly prepared fighter. The only mistake I could see Joanna make was that she gave up her back to get up. But then she did have good back defense. And then she almost, like I said, she almost tapped out Waterson once too. And this is from a striker who's not known for jiu-jitsu. I mean, there was a necktie. So she had that like kind of guillotine, but she was hooking the leg and she dove over and it was tight. It was tight. She did really well. Both of them really impressive performance. Yeah, great fight. So
I liked watching Waterson just hang off of her when they're against the cage.
Yeah.
Putting all her weight on her and just like, hey, hold me.
Yeah. And it was impressive. She did that like a few times too. You know, so close. Yeah. You know, but obviously, Joanna's not the ex-champion for a reason. Yeah. She's she's the ex-champion for a reason. I mean, she's good. She was really prepared. And then, but going out away to the UFC, that was great. You saw one, right?
The only fight I watched was the Demetrius Johnson,
which is amazing.
Which was like a clinic. Like,
so good.
So much like movement and technicality.
That's what I'm talking about. It was like he would shoot and he would be like a double and then he turned it to a knee tap. Yeah. And it almost looked like the guy fell over. It almost looked like a work. You see that one takedown where it looked like the guy just fell? But because he shot in one angle, then pulled the knee the other and the guy just fell. But that's combinations.
And it was so aggressive too. Like the entire fight he was coming.
Every single moment.
It was just, he never gave up.
Yeah.
Putting the pressure on the entire time. He punched him in the head once as the guy's like turning around walking away. Did you see that punch?
No,
like,
I didn't see it.
Did like the guy almost went down to the ground. It was really cool.
Was it like because there was a break or no like
they were like clinching and then broke up.
And then he hit him.
The guy he almost turned around, like walked away from him, and Johnson just hit him in the back of the head.
I saw him throw up a kick.
Yeah.
Did you see the one where he threw up the kick and it was like the guy was walking away and breaking the grip and he brought his leg up and kicked him in the head? Demetrius Johnson's amazing. What I'm surprised is that he didn't finish him. That guy being good though. I mean Kincaid is his name. And he's from Philippines. The Filipino fighters are really coming out. Now, yes, is there a drop off in the overall OneFC? Like the level is not the same level as the UFC. There was another fight, Angela Lee versus the Chinese champion. That was actually a good fight. You know, not the UFC level, but really, really good fight. And Angela Lee was losing the whole most of the fight, really losing, really like, and she lost to this girl once before. And the girl is picking her apart and striking with clean boxing. And Angela Lee's hands are a little bit open, kind of like this. And I think it's because she maybe trains with Thai boxing gloves, boxing gloves. She's a little bit open. She just can't get hit with much more precise boxing. And in 15 seconds left, or actually less, 13 seconds left, the fight is going to end. She's going to lose. She takes her back and chokes her out.
Oh, wow.
And like that's what Michelle Waters, and this kind of finish where it's like, and just, like everything in it, boom, like it was done. Wow. I was really impressed. UFC level, not quite, but still, for like a AAA league, amazing fight. Absolutely amazing. Yeah. Two tremendous warriors. There was no quit whatsoever.
It was their 100th event. So they're still
OneFC's 100th event.
Yeah,
wow.
It was their century. They had a whole thing about it. Like
really?
100 events. So they're compared to UFC, which does an event every 3 days.
Yeah.
But
this one was in Japan, and OneFC has a relationship around with Shuto, which is a grassroots Japanese organization, and you can tell they're trying to position themselves as the UFC, not just of Asia, but like almost like the second coming of Pride, but with a little bit more professionalism. Unfortunately, Pride but Pride had like steroid issues and also issues with
Yakuza.
Yeah, exactly, things like that. And what I like about OneFC is that as far as I can tell, any fight I've ever seen, the refereeing and the judging were completely unbiased. They're really training their people to be fair, and a lot of other promotions don't have that. Even the UFC, obviously it's commissions, but you see fight happens in Ireland, so the Irish Commission, is a little bit more biased towards the Irish fighter. Obviously, you can't get rid of that completely, or the fight happens in
robots.
Yeah, right. But I'll tell you, it's funny you say robots, but there's the CompuStat. There should be like if there's this much division just in CompuStat, there should be like some like thing that you cannot. So if the guy outstruck the guy 20 times more during the round, you can't give a tie. Like some rule like that, where there's some data behind, like, okay, you could give a 10-9 if there's 30 strike difference, or 10-8 obviously, but you can't give a 10-10, because that happens all the time where one guy outstrikes another and like tremendous more in significant strikes, and then some ref goes, no, this round I scored as a tie. I'm like, what? Anyway, there has to be some algorithm behind it. Right. That, they do that for the Olympics now. It's like, if there's this, for some sports, there's an algorithm. You cannot score this. Like, there was a big scandal in ice dancing or ice skating or gym, right? And then they found it was all corrupt. So they said, if they do this amount of things, this is the minimum score you can give them. But there's also a problem with how UFC is judged and all that. But anyway, we'll get into that.
We can't fix it.
Yeah,
we're only human.
We're only human. We'll do
for
it
now.
But the OneFC is really great show. Yeah. A lot of theatrics that UFC doesn't have, like fireworks and things like that. But it was nice. It was also mostly respectful. The funny thing is, the OneFC does not like trash talking, right? They do not like it. But the Angela Lee fight, and I forgot the opponent's name, Chinese fighter. I got her confused with someone else. But she was like, she got very close to trash talking. It was like her pre-fight thing was like, I'm going to go down to her weight class and show her that, she's completely delusional or something like that. It was like, I was like, whoa, this is like getting a little trash talking for you, OneFC. Yeah. She's being very aggressive. But then the Chinese fighter wound up losing. And Demetrius Johnson fight was really good. And they had another fight, which is actually Angela Lee's brother. Which was okay. It was okay. It was again a triple A kind of fight, but he fought hard, and it was fine. But the production value, the overall, the way the thing went was great. And I heard OneFC's coming to America, so I think it's great.
Exciting.
Yeah, but this is my recap of the fight.
It was a good weekend.
Yeah, the one thing that fighters have to understand, MMA is MMA, and you need a variety of skill sets. And if you think you're going to come in one-dimensionally, It's bad. And you know, when the GFCs first happened, the strikers were like, why aren't people striking with us? Well, the jiu-jitsu guys and the wrestlers were like, we're not going to strike with you. We will not accept that strikers agreement. Mm-hmm. Well, now, you know, the jiu-jitsu guys are like, well, why won't you do grappling with us? The strikers like, no, we're going to sprawl and we're not going to accept the agreement. Mm-hmm. And unless you have a significant strategy of how to defeat, how to wrestle and how to set the wrestling up with strikes and level changes, you know, wind up with Ronda Rousey problem where you try to come in and you get punched in the face. And unless you can come in technically, you'll have a problem. Crone had that. Ronda Rousey had it. Crone had it. Mackenzie Dern had it. And Michelle Waterston did not. She came in well, but she had to finish better with the wrestling. Other than her back taking. Back take was good, but you have to be able to, like, you know, finish those takedowns a little bit more with combinations. Mm-hmm. But that's my take on that.
So I can't remember who won the bet.
But we had a bet?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember what the terms were. I can't remember who picked who.
I can't remember either. I have to go back to the thing. Did I just take Waterston out of, like, you know, I knew Giovanni was going to win. But
yeah, you probably gave her up.
Yeah.
Just because
I'll take the L.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I'll take it.
I won. Now you got to go give me a bubble tea.
Oh, okay.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. I just did. But it's always fun to bet. It is.
It makes it more interesting. We got another UFC event coming up on October 18th. Dominic Reyes and Chris Weidman are the main event.
Yeah.
Yair Rodriguez and Jeremy Stevens are co-main event.
Oh, that's interesting. Interesting, like real matchup. See if Weidman can kind of put it together again. You know, he's had a little rough.
Yeah,
going. You know,
I'm interested to see
if he comes back. And Reyes is coming up. It's up and comer versus the steady champion, and then we have a big one after that, right? There's
Rodriguez and Jeremy Stevens.
What's the event after that? That's a big.
Oh, after that, yeah. We got a Fight Night with Damian Maia
and Ben Askren. Yes, that's an interesting one. And I will take Damian Maia on that one.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Have you talked to him recently?
I have not.
No? All right.
But I'm really hoping he does it, and then he retires, and he has a good life. No. I mean, because he was talking about retiring.
Oh,
yeah. That's not a trash talk. I mean,
he's 41 years old.
Yeah. He's like 1 or 2 more fights or something like that. I hope he goes out with spectacular and has a good career. I mean, the other one, I think Ben Askren's really, you know, Ben Askren's kind of, again, a little bit, you know, he gave himself a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's gave it to himself, which you can't do. But I think he really thinks his jiu-jitsu is a lot better than it is. And it's not like he can't grapple, but he's not foundationally sound in some grappling positions. He's more like what we would call catch wrestling and not like straight jiu-jitsu. And, you know, some listeners really like the catch wrestling background, but the thing is when you have a very sound positional control strategy, you're going to do well. And Damian Maia on the ground is very, very significantly skilled. I think Askren will grapple with him and not do well. At least I kind of hope that too, because I'm not a big fan of Askren. And you don't give yourself a black belt in jiu-jitsu. But then again, you know, it might be like when 2 grapplers fight, sometimes it's like it cancels out and they just strike each other.
Well, I'm going to go to Jiu-Jitsu Penny now and buy a black belt. It's going to be reversible, so it'll have brown on the other side, just in case I change my shoes.
You should get one of those like silk ones that the old, like, you know, traditional martial art guys have. It's like super silk and it looks nice.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Does it sell those at JC, or I got to go to like Macy's?
No, you got to order it. You got to order it. Yeah, this is just like,
it's got to be
embroidery and
it's got to be blessed by somebody. I get the.
You know, it's funny, but actually, I know a Muay Thai guy where Muay Thai, they wear the headgear, not headgear, but the headpiece. It's called a mongkong, and it's this thing they wrap around. It has a tassel at the end, and it has some significance. And I think I believe those are blessed by their Buddhist priests and things like this. So, you know, you'd be surprised that does exist.
You hear about those shoes that sold for $3,000
with holy water? Oh my God! Holy moly!
What a joke! All right. A quick one today.
Oh, but speaking of that, did you hear? But the guy broke the 2-hour thing on for he's got the fastest marathon time. This is just for any sport. This is amazing. Shoes? No, not with holy water. Hold on, let me pull it up. It's the first sub 2-hour mile sub 2-hour marathon. Eliud Kipchoge he's from Kenya and he smashes the 2-hour marathon barrier. This is a moment where it's a watershed moment.
Human evolution.
Yeah, there was, you know, a barrister who did the 2-minute mile. This is the first sub 2-hour marathon. That's amazing. Wow. That is unreal.
How many miles is a marathon? More than 2.
Yeah, 27, 26, 27, something like that.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Another 2 hours.
When I was training for my fight, I was a neighbor. He lived in the apartment next door, and he was a marathon runner. I mean, marathons like this, right? And I would be doing my road work with him, and I would only do like a mile, or depending on the day, the mile, 2 miles, sometimes 3, but usually just short distance. This guy is running every day. He's running like minimum 12 miles. On his final mile, he was faster than when I started out. I'm like, what the hell? How are you so freaking fast? You don't think these marathon guys were fast. And then you run with them and you're like, I am just starting out on my first lap. And you're on your whatever lap. You're hitting your end and you're running way faster than me. I was like embarrassed. But they're
about robots.
amazing.
Check that guy out.
Yeah.
He's got robot legs.
But that's it. So we have some great guests coming up next week. We have some really wonderful guests visiting us from the UK, and some really excited. We have some really cool people coming up. So that's our recap for the fights. And
thanks, Philippines.
Yes,
We'll see you,
yeah.
next week.
See you next week.
All right.
Bye bye.